talk about literacy, because we obviously hope that the levels of literacy in the country continues to go up, because we want everybody to have the ability to read and write. Joining me via Skype is Monica Mulenga, country director at Wilbur Zambia, just to give us her thoughts with regards to our topic of discussion, and David Gordon as well, who is the CEO Book Bus UK. Great to have you both on the program. I hope you're well this morning.
Yes, we are well. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Good morning.
Gordon, how are you doing?
Good morning, Brian. Excited to be on your show.
Great. Let's begin to just get your general submission with regards to literacy and development. There are other people who think these two are separable. What's your submission in that regard?
Well, the big question is always, why is literacy important? And I think when you consider that reading is the basis of all knowledge, reading is all about learning. It's about thinking ahead. And I think when a child can read, that child will learn, and that child will gain more knowledge. And when it comes to a knowledge-based society and ultimately a knowledge-based economy, without literacy, it doesn't even really start to roll. So it really is the foundation of not just a child's education, but the whole life that lies ahead of that person.
All right, Monica.
And for Nesh, I don't think you can really separate the two. I think it's the foundation, and having a literate society really speaks into having a much more developed nation. And I think people's ability to read and write helps with also their critical thinking and analysis, and just moving and being more progressive. And if we're going to compete globally as a nation, we definitely need to have a much more literate society. So the two cannot be separated.
All right. Before we look at your products in terms of your innovation, a mobile library called the Book Bus, I'd like to talk about this conversation that obviously makes up the discussion around literacy, reading, the reading culture, so to speak. Others contend that with the coming of the internet and things of that sort, the reading culture in this generation seems to be going down.
Yes, the reading culture may be going down, but you still have to be able to read to use all of these other alternative technologies. So I suppose you can look at reading culture as purely as a cultural tool which reflects society, but also reading as a skill is a technical skill which allows people to do things. So the power of reading is one of the great tools that can bring a country up. But the joy of reading, which is really what some people might call the reading culture, is also a great form of cultural learning and personal development. So I think the reading culture should really be considered as a really important part of society.
Is there anything that society can do to trigger an interest in reading among young people and perhaps society in general?
Yes, I think having more digital platforms has taken away maybe from children spending a lot of time reading actual books, but there's a lot of reading also involved. It's just about what are the children being exposed to when they are on these digital platforms, and what it is that they're reading. So if there's a filter, and if there's a lot of good information that's put out there on these digital platforms, then reading still continues. And for you to be on any platform anyways and interact with anything digital, you need to be able to read. You need to have that ability to read and write or understand what you're reading. So reading definitely still happens, but it's happening in a different form. And yes, there are activities that parents, guardians, or anybody that can encourage children or the youth to engage more with reading, either digitally, as we've talked about it on social media, if there's good material that is put out there that is necessary, that engages them in the way that they want to be engaged. So if we look at Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, we put out materials that actually speaks to them and that maybe will inform them to want to read more or want to explore more. And there will be other activities, like if we look at here, let's say in the UK, you have the young footballers writing books. And so that can engage them. So everybody looks to Marcus Rashford. We have Patson Daka. He's doing very well. Everybody knows him. So if we had books maybe written by them, by these young footballers, the young Zambians would want to read as well. They would want to aspire to be like Patson Daka or Enoch. And that would help them engage with books more or engage with reading more. So there are other activities that can be done, as well as maybe David has something that you'd like to add on.
Well, yes. I mean, I think the choice of book is so important, isn't it? Because a book allows you to share someone else's experiences, which you're never going to do, perhaps on a face-to-face basis. And you choose your books carefully because a book engages the brain. So when you truly understand the book and you engage your brain, you can take your brain to the Olympic training camp, just like you take your body to the gym, and you can work your brain, you can exercise your brain, and you sharpen up your whole mental skills. So I think choosing your book carefully gives you the chance to really broaden your horizon, and you come out a much stronger and more effective thinker. So that can be anything from a cookbook, which makes you a better chef, or it could be a business book, which makes you a more informed business person, or it could be just a good old laugh. Everyone likes a good laugh, and nothing gives you a better laugh than a good book. So the choice of book is important. So get down to your library; they're full of books.
I did engage, a friend of mine. Away from work, and we were talking about the issue of the reading culture, and we were comparing Africa and other developed parts of the world. And he brought up a very interesting point. His argument was, look, the poverty levels in Africa are so high that it is hard to indulge in reading books. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
I can understand where that is coming from. But then again, when you look at the poverty levels being high, and then we say, well, then you can't indulge in books. But you can indulge in books. Do you remember that when we're growing up, or the older generation engaged with the oral literacy, we could call it, they told stories. So coming from that, in a family setup, where you say, yes, the poverty levels are high, we don't have enough money to buy books, but the parents can engage with the children using oral stories, encourage them to read what they get from school, but also do storytelling and also work with books that they've read. You know, the old classics like The Three Little Pigs. You can do the issue where you read the story, but then tell the story from a different point of view. So maybe tell the story from let's say the Jack and the Beanstalk. Tell the story instead from the giant's perspective. I think you've read Jack and the Beanstalk. So instead you've read that story. So we're talking about poverty levels and not having enough money in a home setup to buy so many books and not having time to read. But you can engage with the children by taking all those classic and then telling stories from the opposite perspective and engaging the children to think about it critically and come up with other views from that story. And that also can encourage reading. So we can't say poverty is the issue that people are not reading, because we're also coming from an oral storytelling background. And so you can bring that in and bring all these other aspects in to bring the reading culture back.
David, as we went up this interaction, the role of parents in steering that interest among children to indulge in reading books cannot be overemphasized. But I mean, what would be the best approach for parents out there to use for them to be effective in that regard?
I think right now is the most important time for parents to be engaged with their children. COVID put 1.6 billion children out of school, and globally, and many of those children won't return to school, and maybe half of those children who do return to school aren't going to receive the quality education that allows them to become literate. So parents have to engage. They have to become part of the equation. Parents have to step up and help their children to read. and there's an awful lot of catching up to do. COVID has really threatens to leave a legacy of wasted talent. So I think a child's best teacher is their parent or their guardian, and there has to be a high level of engagement. And, it can be as simple as just encouraging your child to read, making time in the home so when they come home from school, or if they're not attending school, they can read something. Go to the library. Many children provide free books for the children to read in the library. Work within the community, work with your neighbours. Just get books into the house. I think if there's a child grows up in if a child grows up in a house with books, that's going to be the single biggest method of improving their literacy. And just don't leave it up to the teachers, because the teachers are going to be overwhelmed for the next 12 to 24 months by the massive backlog of learning. We've got to get the children back up to speed. They've got to learn again. They've got to make up time. And it's not just the teachers who can do that. The parents really have to step in. So, Monica, we've been working on that.
Yes. So, this is Literacy Month. And just to bring that in, we had Literacy Day, which was International Literacy Day, which was last week on the 8th of September. And as the Book Bus, we're celebrating Literacy Month by acknowledging the power of reading. And we have messages from various professions who are sharing, which we're sharing on our social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can engage with that and see how these professions have used the power of reading to get them to where they are. As well as we have engaged schools, and we've introduced this year we're launching, the pen pal writing, which was done way back between countries, Zambia and the UK or any other country, but now we're engaging the children who are on our project to write to each other to the different schools. So we're bringing that, and that's to encourage children to read and write for themselves, because we want them to be writers, we want them to be readers, we want them to explore their surroundings and explore with their friends. And so they'll be writing to each other. This is what we've launched in our schools this Literacy Month.
All right.
And we are also sharing tips for parents on our social media, so parents can engage with us there and see what they can do with their children.
All right. I'm afraid we have to drop it here for now, because we're pressed for time. But this is a very interesting conversation that I believe needs to go on and on. And some of us who've benefited from reading can attest to the fact that there's nothing as good as indulging in reading a book or two, in your life. Thank you very much for coming through, Monica Mlenga, the country director, Zambia, and Gordon, David, CEO of Book Bus from the UK. Thank you very much for coming through.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Brian. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. You're still watching The Update now. Early on, I did interest you to, what was